Did you know that FEMA flood insurance could be costing you hundreds or even thousands of dollars like it did me many years ago? What if I told you private flood insurance could be saving you a ton of money? Today, in this video, we're going to be talking about some of the hidden benefits of private flood insurance you need to know as an Alabama homeowner. So let's get started. But before we do, make sure to share, subscribe, and like the channel below. Hi, I'm Chris, Flood Insurance Guru. More than 12 years ago, I bought a house in a flood zone. Was told the premiums were going to be $3,000 when they should have been $300. And I've been helping Alabama homeowners just like yourself solve these issues. Look, I know about the changing flood risk in Alabama. I grew up in Birmingham, moved to 280 when there's red light. So I know how these flood risks are changing and climate changing and all these things. But today we're talking about some of the hidden benefits of private flood insurance. But first, we've got to understand FEMA. Why is FEMA potentially not the best choice for you as an Alabama homeowner? For many years, the federal government, the National Flood Insurance Program, it was the only option that people think still today that is the only option. Some of the drawbacks is it kind of could be a one size fits all. No matter where you go, pricing should be the same unless you're taking over somebody else's policy, which is called a policy assumption. But if you're looking at coverages, you can only get coverages up to $250,000 on a residential building. It's different on a commercial building like this in Alabama. You can only get $100,000 on personal contents, things like your couch, things that you would basically be moving out of a house. Think about that. Things that are not attached to your house are going to be your personal belongings that you can get up to $100,000. So these are some of the drawbacks of FEMA. It's basically the pricing is all set there. But how is the pricing set? Well, let's talk a little bit about that. You see, flood zones are no longer used with the federal flood insurance program, the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP you'll hear us refer to in this video. Instead, they look at things like distance to water. Well, you can't really see the water around me here, but there's some back there. Then they look at things like replacement costs on a residential building. These are commercial buildings, so they have a higher replacement cost. That means that their rates could be significantly higher because replacement cost is a big rate driver with the National Flood Insurance Program now. Then there's things like flood frequency. Well, if I'm in an area that floods a lot, once again, that could change the modeling with the National Flood Insurance Program or the type of flooding. If I'm in an area that gets a lot of rainfall, as you can see right now, it's actually starting to rain. It looks at elevation. As you can see, some of these buildings are a little more elevated, which could technically benefit their rate. So all these things are put into a risk pool to determine your rate. Unfortunately, the National Flood Insurance Program does not tell us, hey, 20% here, 20% there, like we used to be able to tell. So it can be very hard to understand these ratings, the National Flood Insurance Program, but this is how they build their rates. So now that we know that, let's move on and talk about private flood insurance because that's what this video is about. Here's where private flood insurance shines, comparing it to the National Flood Insurance Program. We've talked about coverages, we've talked about pricing. Well, one area that the private flood insurance shines, and we're going to talk about a few of them here. First of all, is coverage amounts. Like your building coverage is no longer at $250,000. It could potentially be up to $4 million, $5 million, depending on the size of your building, the replacement cost. You can't get replacement cost on contents. The National Flood Insurance Program, you can with private flood insurance. What happens if your home floods and you need a temporary place to live? Well, this is called additional living expense. Once again, this is an additional benefit that private flood insurance provides. So those are the coverage amounts. Now let's talk about pricing. We've talked about the National Flood Insurance Program has all the same pricing. Well, every private flood insurance company is going to be different on pricing and how they look at flood risk. They do look at a lot of things the National Flood Insurance Program looks at. Some of them do still look at flood zones. So you might be able to get a lower rate based on your flood zone. Click on the bottom of this video to find your flood zone on our website. So when it comes to private, those are some areas where they shine. Let's talk a little bit about claims with private flood insurance in Alabama. And that is that the claims processing can actually be quicker because you don't have all this red tape with the federal government. Now, during Hurricane Ian in Florida, we saw an average payout on private flood insurance claims of about 60 days. And we saw with the National Flood Insurance Program, claims could take up to 2 years. So it can be a much quicker claims process here. Now, what you have to be cautious with private flood insurance and filing these claims sometimes is you may get non-renewed or your rate may go up significantly, and that may not happen with the National Flood Insurance Program. So this is how the claims processing can be quicker. And we talked about the coverage limit of $250,000 when these claims are settled. Typically, you can get a lot more than this if you have the coverage there, you were paying the proper premium, and you have the correct replacement cost listed. You want to make sure you've got that replacement cost correctly listed for your private flood insurance. Private flood insurance in Alabama is also tailored to your needs because you're building a policy that you need based on your certain property, unlike the National Flood Insurance Program that's only going to give you up to a certain coverage amount. And if you got a $2 million house, you may be able to get up to $2 million in coverage. If your mortgage is $2,000 a month, you may be able to get additional living expenses up to $24,000, would give you 12 months. And you may ask, hey, what's the benefit of additional living expense with private? Let me tell you a story real quick of a customer we had in Nebraska. The only one on her block that had additional living expense. And she had a hotel paid for 6 months. That was a lot of financial stress that was not on her. And this can be one of the benefits of having that additional living expense listed on your private flood insurance policy. So these have been just some of the benefits you could see with private flood insurance. Now let me tell you a story about an Alabama homeowner who decided to take the chance and switch to a private company from the National Flood Insurance Program after being with them for more than 20 years. Her premiums were about $2,500. When she found all the different private flood insurance options, discovered that not just 1, 2, or 3 of these options were all under $1,000. She was gonna be saving $1,500 a year. This was saving her over $100 a month on her mortgage. So this is one of the benefits in Alabama. This is just one example that we see every day where private flood insurance can be a much larger benefit to Alabama homeowners than a national flood insurance program. Now, if you're ready to explore the different private flood insurance options in Alabama, you can do the first thing is to step in the corner of this video and just watch our playlist on comparing the National Flood Insurance Program to private. Then click in the description of this video. You can fill out the form real quick to get a quote, and it's 3 simple steps. Step 1, fill out the form. Step 2, review the options. And Step 3, finalize your policy. It's that easy on switching over to private flood insurance. I'm Chris, the Flood Insurance Guru, and I look forward to speaking to you in our next video. And remember, everybody's in a flood zone.